There's something strange about the way we talk about success. We admire the ones who hustle, who grind, who work late into the night. We repeat stories of those who made it through sheer hard work, as if effort alone can guarantee achievement. And so, many people live by a quiet equation. If I work hard enough, I will succeed. But reality doesn't always follow that logic. Some of the hardest working people we know are still struggling. Meanwhile, others who seem to work less, rest more, and move differently somehow thrive, not just in money, but in peace. So, what changed? Why does working hard no longer feel like a straight path to success? Why does it so often lead to burnout instead? To answer that, we have to begin with a belief passed down by generations. A belief that once made perfect sense, just not in the world we live in today. For decades, this idea shaped the backbone of the American dream. Work hard, and you will succeed. It was more than a motivational slogan. It was a moral compass, a life strategy, even a measure of worth. This belief was born in a different era, one where effort often did lead to progress. After World War II, the U.S. economy expanded rapidly. Jobs were plentiful, industries boomed, and people who committed to steady, long-term labor could buy homes, raise families, and retire with dignity. For our parents or grandparents, hard work was not just honorable, it was effective. It worked. And that shaped everything. Schools taught children the value of diligence. Parents passed down the ethic of pay your dues. Workplaces rewarded loyalty and promoted from within. There was a kind of fairness, or at least the appearance of it. You put in the hours, you played by the rules, and slowly but surely, you moved forward. It's easy to see why this belief became a guiding light. In a world of scarcity and survival, working hard was the most accessible tool people had to change their circumstances, especially for immigrants, blue-collar workers, and anyone starting with less. When you don't have connections, privilege, or capital, what do you have left? Your time, your sweat, your will. This value system also carried a moral undertone. Working hard meant you were disciplined, reliable, a person of character. Success wasn't just about achievement. It was proof that you had earned it the right way. But here's where it gets complicated. That equation, hard work equals success, relies on one silent assumption: that the system you're working in still rewards effort. And for many young people today, that assumption no longer holds true. The hours are still long. The grind is still glorified. But the outcomes? They're increasingly unpredictable. Some of the most diligent people are stuck in unstable jobs, buried in student debt, or working multiple side hustles just to get by. Meanwhile, others who may have better networks or simply better timing can leapfrog ahead with far less effort. And so, a quiet question begins to emerge in the minds of this generation. If working hard doesn't guarantee success anymore, then what's the point of burning out to prove you deserve it? That question marks the beginning of a shift, not because young people are lazy, not because they lack ambition, but because they've inherited a world where effort alone no longer opens doors the way it used to. This generational rift isn't just economic, it's psychological. When Gen Z hears, "work hard and you'll succeed," it often feels less like encouragement and more like gaslighting. They're already working hard. Many are balancing school, jobs, caregiving, and mental health struggles while being told they simply need to try harder. The dissonance is deafening. This isn't rebellion. It's a different reality. Because in today's world, the problem isn't just that hard work doesn't always lead to success. It's that, if done blindly, it can lead to something else entirely. exhaustion, anxiety, and a kind of numbness that makes people question whether they're even on the right path. So the belief in working hard is no longer enough. And from that reckoning, a new belief is emerging, one that shifts the goal from effort to awareness, from pushing harder to choosing better. It's not about doing less. It's about doing what matters without destroying yourself in the process. That belief begins with a simple reframe, quietly spreading across social media, work culture, and therapist offices. A belief that sounds softer, but holds its own kind of strength. Work smart to stay sane. Work hard and you will succeed. To older generations, that sentence evokes hope, but to many young people today, it evokes anxiety. Not because they reject hard work, but because they've seen it break people, up close, repeatedly. They've seen their parents sacrifice health for job security, only to be laid off. They've watched teachers, nurses, and service workers burn out in systems that demanded more than they gave back. They've seen friends graduate with honors, only to return home jobless and unsure. And perhaps most personally, they've felt what it's like to give everything to something and still feel like it's not enough. The grind has lost its promise. In today's economy, hard work is no longer a straight road, it's a treadmill. You can run faster, longer, harder, but the view doesn't change. And slowly, that realization reshapes the way young people define effort, ambition, and even success itself. This is not a rebellion against discipline. It's a response to diminishing returns. Unlike previous generations, Gen Z and millennials are growing up in a world where output doesn't always equal outcome. The same job can yield wildly different results depending on your zip code, your mental health, your access to networks, or simply the luck of timing. In that kind of world, raw effort isn't enough. You have to be strategic. And more importantly, you have to stay well enough to keep going. That's where the shift begins. Instead of asking, how can I push harder? Young people are asking, is this even worth it? Instead of assuming burnout is the price of success, they're questioning whether success should cost them their peace in the first place. This mindset shift can look, from the outside, like laziness. But it's actually a survival strategy. It's choosing to optimize rather than overextend, choosing to invest energy where it counts rather than scatter it everywhere out of obligation. They're not rejecting hard work, they're rejecting pointless hard work. This shift is also deeply tied to mental health. Unlike generations before, Gen Z speaks openly about anxiety, depression, and overwhelm. They understand that stress isn't just emotional, it's physical. And if you ignore it long enough, it becomes illness. The old mantra of push through the pain isn't inspiring anymore, it's dangerous. In fact, for many young professionals, protecting their sanity is now part of their definition of success. They're no longer impressed by 80-hour weeks, constant availability, or self-neglect. They're impressed by balance, by boundaries, by the courage to say no to things that used to be non-negotiable. This doesn't mean they've stopped dreaming big. It means they're dreaming differently. Instead of sacrificing everything for a job title, they're prioritizing flexibility. Instead of chasing money at all costs, they're chasing meaning. Instead of measuring self-worth by productivity, they're asking deeper questions. Does this work align with who I am? Will this path allow me to grow or just drain me? Is this effort building something sustainable or just feeding a system that never gives back? In this new equation, success isn't just what you achieve, it's who you become while getting there. That brings us to a new kind of wisdom, one that isn't loud or aggressive, one that doesn't shout "hustle harder," but quietly says, there's a better way. It's the shift from work hard to prove your worth to work smart so you don't lose yourself. And that shift is captured in a new belief, a phrase that's becoming a quiet mantra for the next generation, especially for those learning how to build lives that are not just productive, but livable. Work smart to stay sane. Let's take a closer look at what this new belief really means, and why so many young people are choosing it, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. At first glance, this sentence might sound like an excuse, a clever way to avoid effort. But for many young people today, work smart to stay sane is not about doing less. It's about doing differently, deliberately, sustainably. It's not a rejection of ambition. It's a redefinition of what ambition looks like in a world that's always online, always demanding, always moving. To work smart means to question the default settings, to step back before stepping in, to ask not just how to get things done, but why they matter at all, and to stay sane. That's the revolutionary part, because it implies that sanity is now at risk in modern work culture, and that protecting your mental clarity, emotional well-being, and personal time isn't weakness, it's wisdom. This belief comes from lived experience. Many young professionals have tried the hustle harder model. They've overcommitted, overperformed, and overexerted themselves in the name of being valuable. What they got in return wasn't always success. It was burnout, resentment, and sometimes a complete loss of self. So they started asking better questions. Instead of, "What more can I do?" they asked, "What actually moves the needle?" Instead of measuring progress by hours worked, they measured by energy sustained. Instead of chasing productivity for its own sake, they pursued clarity of purpose, direction, and personal boundaries. In practice, working smart looks like saying no to meaningless meetings, automating repetitive tasks, designing systems that reduce friction, choosing work that aligns with long-term values, knowing when to pause before pushing forward. It's about investing energy where it yields real returns, not just applause. It also means accepting that rest is not the enemy of success, but the condition for it. This generation is learning sometimes the hard way that exhaustion is not a badge of honor, and that you can't create your best work from a place of survival. They're no longer romanticizing the grind. They're respecting rhythm, the rise and fall of energy, the cycles of focus and recovery, the balance between drive and detachment. And this shift is deeply practical, because in an age of information overload, digital distraction, and constant change, the people who thrive are not the ones who push the hardest. They're the ones who navigate complexity with clarity, who know what to ignore, what to delegate, when to rest, and how to protect their inner world from outer chaos. So yes, the mantra sounds soft, stay sane, but it's built on something solid. The realization that sustainable success requires self-awareness, that no job is worth losing your sleep, your health, or your sense of self. And this belief is spreading not just among freelancers or creatives, but across industries. Corporations are now offering mental health days. Remote workers are setting firmer boundaries. Even high performers are learning that the cost of constant output is too high if it comes with chronic depletion. Still, not everyone understands this shift. To someone raised on the idea that success must be earned through visible sacrifice, working smart can feel like cheating, or worse, like giving up. To them, choosing balance can look like settling. Choosing boundaries can look like rebellion. Choosing sanity can look like weakness. But maybe that's because they grew up in a world where survival was the goal. Now, the goal is different. To build a life that doesn't need escaping from. And that brings us to an important question. What happens when this new belief meets the old one across the dinner table, across generations, across expectations? Because as young people quietly redefine success, many older adults are watching with confusion, concern, and sometimes fear. Let's take a closer look at how the older generation reacts. Not just with judgment, but often with love, worry, and a deep sense of disorientation. For many older adults, watching their children or younger colleagues embrace working smart feels unsettling. Not because they want to see them suffer, but because they associate struggle with growth. To them, discomfort is a sign you're on the right path. If you're not pushing hard, maybe you're not pushing at all. They came of age in a time when job security was tied to sacrifice, when putting your head down and enduring was how you built a future. Burnout wasn't discussed, it was expected. Mental health? Not a reason to rest, but something to manage quietly, without disrupting your responsibilities. So when they hear someone say, "I need to take a break," or "This job is hurting my mental health," their instinct isn't always empathy, it's fear. Fear that this person might fall behind, miss their chance, be labeled unreliable. And behind that fear is often something deeper, a memory of their own pain, unspoken and unresolved. They see young people choosing peace over pressure, and a part of them wonders, what if I had done that? Would I have lost everything? Or maybe, would I have been okay? But they rarely say those words aloud. Instead, what they express is concern. Don't you want to go further? Are you sure this isn't just being lazy? Life isn't supposed to be easy. And in some ways, their right life isn't easy, but it's also not supposed to crush us. The real tension isn't between work and rest. It's between two generations, each trying to protect what they value most. For the older generation, it's safety. For the younger one, it's sanity. And maybe, just maybe, both are trying to love each other through the lens of their own wounds. So how do we make peace with these two beliefs without dismissing either? Let's bring it all together. Success doesn't look the same for every generation because the world doesn't stay the same. Our parents believed in hard work because it gave them options. It lifted them out of scarcity. It was a lifeline. But for many of us today, hard work without direction becomes a trap. It keeps us running but never arriving. It convinces us to keep proving, even when no one's watching. And in the process, we lose touch with the reason we started in the first place. That's why this shift matters. Work hard and you will succeed, taught us resilience. Work smart to stay sane teaches us sustainability. We don't have to choose one and reject the other. We can hold both. Work ethic from the past. Emotional intelligence from the present. Because true success isn't just about what you build, but how well you live while building it. So if you find yourself tired, not just physically, but spiritually, maybe the answer isn't to push harder. Maybe it's to pause, to ask better questions, to choose the kind of work that builds not just a career, but a life. And if this message spoke to you, if it made you feel a little more seen, a little less alone, consider subscribing to When It's True. We dive deep into the beliefs that shape use and the truths that set us free. I appreciate you being here, truly. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.